27. 26 knots, down the angle. 106, the interval is a rhino at 5. Sure, sir. 207 on flat path, on course 1 mile. Sure, sir. 207 on flat path, on course.
On the night of the 24th of August 1940, as the Battle of Britain was unfolding, 100 German Heinkel 111s flew across the southeast coast of England bound for their targets, which were the oil storage facilities at Thameshaven and an aircraft factory at Rochester. A series of navigational errors led to 12 of the German aircraft overrunning their objective and flying west towards the British capital of London. Believing that they were over their target, the 12 aircraft released their payloads onto the area below them, before beginning their flight back to mainland Europe. For the first time in the Second World War, the people of London endured a night of bombs raining down onto them, as air raid sirens rang out across the city, smoke rose up from destroyed buildings, and fires illuminated the night sky as the city's fire service fought to put them out. The next morning, on the 25th of August, as the German bombers returned to their respective airfields, Hermann Goering, the Commander-in-Chief of the Luftwaffe, was notified of the attack against the British capital, a target he had strictly ordered to not be attacked. Furious that his orders had been ignored, Goering personally instructed all the airmen involved to be removed from his command. Meanwhile, across the Channel, the British were unaware that the attack had been accidental, and Prime Minister Winston Churchill held an emergency meeting with his War Cabinet to discuss what steps should be taken in retaliation. After a series of discussions, all those in attendance unanimously agreed that a retaliatory strike against Berlin, the German capital, had to be authorised, an order Churchill personally sanctioned. At his headquarters at R.A.F. High Wycombe, Air Marshal Charles Portal, the Commander-in-Chief of R.A.F. Bomber Command, was ordered to assemble a force that could hit Berlin that night. Unfortunately for Portal, the assets available to him at the time were limited, for Britain's bomber fleet was relatively small in size. Nonetheless, Portal was able to muster together a force of 103 aircraft to carry out operations that evening. Of the 103 aircraft, 67 Vickers Wellington and Handley Page Hampton bombers were tasked with hitting Berlin, with the main targets being the Tempelhof Airport, the Simonstadt Electrical Plant, the Klingenberg Power Station, and 2 aircraft factories in the city's suburbs. At the same time, 24 Wellington and Whitworth Whitley bombers were to carry out diversionary raids against Bremen, Ham and Cologne, whilst the remaining 12 aircraft, which were Bristol Blenheims, were to strike Luftwaffe airfields across France and the Netherlands. Just before 2100 on the 25th of August 1940, the first engines of the British bomber fleet kicked into life across airfields in the northeast of England. Taken off, the aircraft formed up into their respective groups, before heading out across the North Sea about an hour later. It was over the North Sea that the crewmen found that they were constantly fighting a strong headwind, meaning their aircraft were using more fuel on the outbound flight than had been anticipated, raising some concerns for the crewmen. Those worries had to be put aside for the time being, however, as the bomber force made landfall over Germany in the early morning hours of the 26th of August, from where they began to encounter flak fire from German anti-aircraft batteries. Keeping in formation, the 67 aircraft flew over northwestern Germany bound for Berlin, but found that the city was covered in thick low cloud, which prevented the aircrews from identifying their targets. It's no surprise then that only 29 bombers dropped their payloads that night, with no reports indicating direct hits on the designated targets, although a power station and aircraft factory were hit. Other bombs either landed within the city, including one which destroyed a wooden shed, or onto farmhouses in the German countryside. Flying out from the target, the force then began the 500-mile flight back to Britain. It was on this return flight that some of the crews began to experience trouble with their aircraft, including Pilot Officer Richard Bunker, the pilot of Hampton X-2895 of No. 83 Squadron, R.A.F. Bunker's Hampton began to experience issues with its engines as a result of fuel shortages, and despite keeping it in the air for as long as possible, Bunker was forced to crash land the aircraft in the British countryside near Sunderland. Elsewhere in southwestern Germany, the pilot of Hampton P2070 for No. 50 Squadron, R.A.F, experienced a similar problem and was forced to ditch the aircraft near the city of Mannheim, leading to all 4 crewmen being taken prisoners of war by a nearby German garrison. By 0600 on the 26th of August, the R.A.F bombers began to touch down at their respective airfields, from where their aircrews were debriefed on the mission. Of the 67 aircraft that had attacked Berlin that morning, a total of 6 aircraft were lost in the flight home, primarily due to fuel shortages, although no crewmen lost their lives. As for the diversionary attacks over Cologne, Bremen and Ham, the 24 bombers successfully accomplished their objectives and returned back to base without incident. Unfortunately, the Blenheim force, targeting the airfields, didn't fare so well, and of the 12 sent, 3 did not make it home.